Hi everyone, I'm Mims and welcome back. Thank you for being here. Today I thought that I would film outside. The patio is a bit messy, so there's going to be something I'm sure within the shot. But I wanted to sit out here just to get outside for a little bit. Hopefully it will be quiet, but just know that I am outside, so there could be some background noise, whether it's birds or we are also pretty close to a railroad, and inevitably if I start a video there will be a train that comes along. Anyway, I thought that I would make this video my birthday haul video. I have 2 used decks that I bought for myself. I have a new deck that I got from a friend. She didn't know that it was my birthday, but I'm including that. I also have a used book, which I'll talk about. Not tarot related, but I'll share that. And then I have a package of another used deck. So we'll start with that one and then we'll look at the others. In some ways, it might seem a little silly even to consider, decks that I buy for myself as a birthday gift, because I'm single, an adult, I have no children, and so pretty much every deck that I buy is a gift for myself. And buying used is one of my very favorite ways of buying a deck. Not only is it a great way to find a bargain, it can also be, there are lovely benefits in terms of the environment, and I also think it's neat, especially having now watched TarotTube for a while and I've seen people talking about like clearing out their collections and things, and wanting to get rid of decks, and very often a deck that people are selling, a deck that someone is selling as a used deck, is often a deck that they no longer use or maybe hardly ever used. So I would say a good chunk of my collection at this point is used, and they're often, except for no cellophane around the box, you wouldn't have been able to tell. So this is the deck, and this is a deck that I've wanted for a while. It's a Tarot of the 1001 Nights. The artwork is by Léon, Carré. There's a neighbor, but we'll keep going. Hopefully they won't see me talking to the camera. Anyway, this is a deck published by Scarabeo, and it's a deck, like I said, that I've wanted for a long time. I think it's beautiful, and this was first published, let's see if it says, okay, copyright 2005. So this is the box. It's a good tuck box deck, and it still has, I know some people don't like them, but I do, the borders with the multiple languages. That's one of the things that I loved about those earlier Scarabeo decks. I loved the idea that multiple people from around the world speaking multiple languages, that we were all speaking tarot. So anyway, we're just gonna flip through all the cards. The other decks I'll probably just show some of the cards, but for this one I thought that I would show the whole set. And what's also pretty nifty, they put the entire deck back in order. So that's pretty nifty too. One of the things that I liked about this deck is I thought that it would be great then to get a book of the 1001 Nights. I think from what I understand, it's an anthology that has been translated multiple times over even centuries, and representing all of these different stories. So those are the backs. I just think it's also a beautiful deck. if I didn't finish that sentence earlier. I love when, and I try to always do this when I sell a deck, whether I'm selling a deck to a used bookstore, or recently I sold, how many decks did I sell? I think I sold, the other day I sold a couple of decks to a used bookstore, so I put them all back in order. And before that, the same used bookstore in town, I had sold a couple of used Oracle decks, so I put them all back in order, also because I thought if they did want to verify, it would be easier for them to verify that everything was in there. And then if somebody did open it, you know, as like me, somebody who did buy the deck, it would be easier for them to then, let's say, work through the guidebook. Anyway, I have recently sold, like I said, I sold, within the last month or so, I've sold 4 decks, 2 Oracle and 2 used, to the used bookstore in town. And then, because you can get credit, and sometimes they have some good tarot decks as well. And then I've sold a few decks to Tarot Garden, which is an online tarot shop based here in the United States, and they deal quite a bit. They sell new and used. They sell collectibles, and they sell independent and mass-produced, mass-market decks. So I sold a handful of decks to them, and I feel like that just is kind of par for the course. As as my collection grows, there's going to be a few decks that I realize I'll want to, sell or release. Anyway, these were just some gifts for myself for the summer, for birthday, and I was excited to find this one. It had been, like I said, on my wish list, and I just love all these stories that are implied within these cards. And it's just beautiful. And this deck doesn't even look like it's been used at all. So it just felt like a fun one to add in. I love the color. I love the depth. Really does feel like you'd kind of dive into it. And I recently showed a video of my favorite book or author based decks, and so within that I included my Emily Dickinson tarot and the Goblin Market tarot, which is based on the poem by Christina Rossetti, and then one of my very favorite decks of all is the Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Yoshitani, which is based on deities and folklore and fairy tales from around the world. And so I think every time we pull out a deck, we're telling a story, right? We're making sense of questions or events or things around us or the feelings inside. And we look, I think, to the cards for that perspective. And sometimes that perspective is more easily told within a story. And as I've read books over the years to learn tarot, and as I've learned, I've taken a few online classes on tarot, and one of my favorite tarot teachers, whom I didn't discover until after he passed away, is Vincent Pitisci, and he talked a lot about his tarot map on YouTube, and he passed away a couple of years ago, but his all his videos are still up, and he's got quite a few on there. And one of the big things that he talked about that really resonated for me, and that was helpful for me to transition from just from only reading for myself. I've read for people on and off over the years, but not ever on a large basis. But one of the big things that he's talked about is it helps to, as you're laying down the cards, to be able to relay the story as it relates to the person you're reading for, their question, and the cards as you lay them out. So as you're putting them down on the table, he talked about you're telling the story as it goes along, and you're relating it to that question and the cards related to each other. And so he talked about as a wonderful skill building tool is to, as you're laying out the cards, lay down what the story is. Tell the story as you see the cards. And I love that idea. And so I think there's a reason why storytelling decks, I'm going to call them now, appeal to me. So that is the very lovely Tarot of the Thousand and One Nights and the artwork is by Léon Carré, and this is published by Scarabeo, first published in 2005. So now I'll show you the other decks that I got for myself for my birthday. Let me first just get these back. Oh yeah, and one of these, like I said, is a gift from a friend, but she didn't know it was my birthday. She sent it to me last week, so I had already opened it, but it's the Folk Art Lenormand. This is by Rowan Ortins. This is published by US Games. And look how pretty the box is. So this deck, and I've already played with it. I think I did though put it back in, did I? No, I did not put it back in order. So this deck is copyright 2025, so I think it was just published like earlier in the year, maybe just even this summer. And Rowan Ortins also published, or has published, the, what's it called, Folklore Tarot? Which is also, this is the Folk Art Lenormand. Maybe the other deck is the Folk Art, does it say? Maybe it's called the Folk Art Tarot. It's either like the Folklore Tarot or the Folk Art Tarot. So it's also fun to think about that deck as well, being a kind of a story-based deck. Anyway, it has a good little guidebook, and I thought it was really nice of my friend to send this to me. These are the backs. So some of you may know, you may not know about Lenormand. Lenormand is traditionally what's considered a 36 card deck. This does have there's a few extra cards. So they have the 0 card for the querent, and then they have 2, so it's the cards 28 and 29 that are for, in some cases you can now find decks where that'll just say like person 1 and person 2. But let me just find those couple of cards just to show you. 28 and 29 are usually indicated for the, well, I found one of them. Let's see if I can find the other. I just thought that this deck was really, really pretty. And up until now, this is the only, I've only had one Lenormand deck. Only. One is all you need, right? But I thought it was really nice of my friend to send these to me. So here are so I love this multiple color. It almost looks like etching, or even it reminds me a little bit of like a black light. And you can kind of see that there's a bit of an effect on the cards. So here you have the 229 cards for woman, and then the 228 cards for male, for the man. But you could obviously then pull out one or both depending on your questions and so forth. So we'll just do, I won't flip through all of the cards, but I just thought I would show you a few of them. I really like the fox. And the fox is actually on the cover. And I love the star card. I just thought that this would be a lot of fun to work with. And so we have child. Let's find the dog. Oh, here we have Lily. Oh yeah. And I always like the dog card too. And in fact, you may hear Jupiter in the background. Jupiter, he's not my dog, but I get to live with him for now, and I definitely consider him to be one of my best friends. But he was not the one who sent me the Lenormand deck. So that is a few cards from the Folk Art Lenormand by Rowan Ortins. And like I said, Rowan Ortins also made a tarot deck that I'm completely going blank on the name of. But it has a name with folk and tarot in the title, but I don't know if it's a folk art tarot or folklore tarot, but I think it must have a similar look. And I know it was published in the last like 4 or 5 years, but this Lenormand deck is new. So I thought that was very cool to send this, or that my friend sent this to me. And it will definitely be a lot of fun to play with. And even though the art is very different, I think these would even, they kind of go well together. I think the oranges and the layered effect of those cards. Okay. Next we have, I'll do this one. We got the Dark Goddess Tarot. Now this was also a used deck. This is by Lorenzi-Prince, and in fact, she has a new deck, I think, that was just published also by Red Feather. So this came out a few years ago, and the only thing, like I said, I got mine used. The only thing that was damaged was the inset for the cards, so I just took it out. And even though this isn't very pretty right now, what I thought I could do is maybe cover that up with like some stickers, and then maybe just have, I liked having just the box itself. And I thought what I might do is then just put the cards in a bag, but I haven't done that yet. But anyway, so it's the Dark Goddess Tarot by Lorenzi-Prince. And this was first published, let's see if it says, 2020. And so it has a lovely guidebook with a bit, and again, there's kind of a theme here, which I don't think I realized that there would be. Within there's a thread running through all of these. When you see these different goddesses, of course, there's a story. And I think I had heard somebody talk about this deck, and they felt like they wanted the book to include more detail, but I thought I at least have the name of the story. I have a couple of mythology sorts of directories, or and definitely a couple of fairy tale sorts of anthologies. So I figure I can look within those and learn more, and then of course I can look online, and I might look for some kind of book of goddesses to learn more. But anyway, I was really intrigued by both the art as well as this idea of a dark goddess. So these are the cards, and they have this gilding, the spoiled effect. And these cards are a little bit larger than a typical tarot size. So I've also already played with these a little bit. So all the gifts to myself that I got for myself are used, and then the Lenormand deck for my friend was new. Whoops. Ooh. We'll count that as a draw. 7 of Earth. Urshkigel? I don't know even how to say that, but let's look that one up. 7 of Earth. Seven of Pentacles. Or Seven of Coins. But let's see what this one says. This is a Sumerian goddess of the underworld. Ereshkigal is the Sumerian goddess of death and queen of the underworld. She is known mostly through Inanna's story of descent and resurrection. Though Inanna suffers when she journeys below, it is due to her trespassing, not because of the underworld. It is due to her trespassing, not because the underworld is a place of punishment. Ereshkigal's realm is a spiritual place. Ereshkigal? I need to figure that one out. Is a spiritual place that opens up for the dead after their burial. It is their proper place, as the heavens are the proper place of the gods. Those who are dying pray for the Lady of the Great Place to receive them, and that they may be fortunate enough to find a place near her feet and never wander lost upon the earth. In the well-ordered universe of Sumer, the underworld has rules even the gods must obey. No one may return to the land of the living. No one may rule from both above and below. When Ereshkigal appears, intuitive leaps are the results of powerful but subterranean processes. Trust the one that emerges from the depths over the one coming at you from left field. Though the consequences may not be apparent or just, certain rules cannot be broken, and some should not be broken. Know which are which. Success does not come from intemperate or injudicious actions. Symbols can lose meaning and omens become lost if attention is not paid. Keeping a record over time reveals patterns at work. Discoveries await for you. Keep digging. When magical tools have lost their power or purity, recharge them by burial in the earth for 7 days before cleaning and reconsecration. That might feed into, how do you take care of a deck that has been given to you from someone else or that's been used? How do you take care of those sorts of things? Do you do cleansing? I tend to do a cleansing, sometimes in the sun, sometimes with incense. It just sort of depends on the day and when I get the cards. But anyway, that's the Dark Goddess Tarot by Lorenzi-Prince. And like I said, I bought a used version. And then this last deck is not a tarot or an oracle deck, but it's one that I have known about since high school. And it's called The Box of Stars. And this is by Tennant. And I remember seeing this in high school and then also later on at a nature center that I worked for. I worked as a naturalist for a summer. And then I remember there was a big library of field guides and things that we could borrow. We could use them for our own programming, and then of course we could bring some of the books out for like the programs that we taught or the day camps that we were running. And I ended up doing a star program, and I didn't use this particular deck at the time, but I remember thinking about it and then thinking about how to tell the stories when I did the star program. So this is by, did I say this already? It's by Tennant. This version that I have was first published in 1993, but it is a replica of a deck that's called Urania's Mirror that was published, I think, in the 1800s, maybe even the 1700s. Let's see if it says. Here we go. The cards themselves were originally hand-painted, were invented by a lady, in quotes, and published in London around 1825. Called Urania's Mirror after the Greek muse of astronomy, they were and still are an original and easy way to get to know the heavens. So the booklet here gives you a little bit about, the stars from the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and then, stars in winter and summer. And then it even tells you which plates to use. So these are giant cards, and they have, it's kind of hard to see, but they have the holes punched so that you could shine it at night with a flashlight and you would be able to see the continents. And there are, I think there are 30 of them? 32. And so for each, so I got mine used, but you can still find versions of this. And so it will tell you what the plate is. So this would be considered the plate, the card. And it will tell you the stars that are pictured or the constellations thereof. And then it will talk a little bit about the stars and then a little bit about the story or the constellation and then how to locate it. And then if there's more than one constellation within, it's shown here. And so I like these more from the astronomy standpoint rather than the astrology standpoint. But again, they're still related to stories. Oh, I've looked at this already, so these are kind of back in order. I just thought this was such a neat thing, and I was excited to find it. I had a gift card for eBay, a $10 gift card, and I remember thinking, like, I probably won't be able to get anything on eBay for $10. I found this deck used for $12, so I pretty much was able to get it with the gift card, and it was free shipping. So I just thought that it was a really neat set to look at, and I like that they look old, but you know, mine was brand new. So here we have Ursa Major. And so, like, the stars that are outside of that constellation are not punched out. But they are already punched out. So here you have Hercules and Corona Borealis. Delphinius, Sagitta, and Aquila. Obviously, I know I need to maybe do a little pronunciation practice right before I make a video because I'm butchering things today. Then we have Taurus, and Gemini, and I am a Cancer, so there's the Cancer. Yeah, so those are the decks that I got for myself. It's called The Box of Stars, and it is by Tennant. And as far as I know, I think there have been newer editions of this, but it is based on an 1825 version called Urania's Mirror. And I'm pretty sure that you can also get another deck like this that's called Urania's Mirror. Anyway, I was excited to add that in. And like I said, I've known about this since high school, and finally just thought, okay, let's add this in for my birthday. And I had been looking for a while. I had a search on eBay going for a while, and found a good one a used one at a good price. And so that was a fun thing to add. And then the last thing that I added the other day, I think I've talked about this already at the beginning of this, that I had sold a couple of decks to the used bookstore in town, and the used bookstore in town, I think most bookstores work this way, but just in case, this is a bookstore that sells both new and used. So if you get credit, you're not able to buy new things with your book credit, but you are able to buy used things. So the other day I went because I wanted to get a book for each of my nieces and nephews for a family gathering. And so I thought I would use some of my credit, and I was really excited because I just wanted something easy for them to read. They all like to read, but they're all the age of 8 and under. So I wanted them to each have their own book, and then, they can share with each other. A couple of them, there's 3 of them that are siblings, and then the other one is their cousin. So they're all related. And so I was super excited because I had, I don't know, almost $40 in book credit, thanks to having cleaned out some books and then having sold some of those decks. And I ended up finding books for all 4 of them, and a book for me for under, I think it was like $12 total. So that was pretty neat. So I found Agatha Christie, Death in the Clouds. This is, I think I'm pretty sure it's a Poirot deck, book. It is, yeah. But it was in really good shape, and I had not read this one. I'm pretty sure that I've seen a version of it on, with a Poirot version of it on TV at one point, but it's been a long time, and so I was glad to get this. I like to add into my Agatha Christie collection, and I also love that picture of her. That's a pretty one. So yeah, the Agatha Christie Death in the Clouds. So that's my little birthday haul. An Agatha Christie book, or Death in the Clouds, and then a used copy of Tarot of 1001 Nights, and a used copy but looked brand new copy of The Box of Stars by Tennant, and a used copy where the box is a little rough but the cards are in really good shape, of The Dark Goddess Tarot by Lorenzi-Prince, and then the very thoughtful gift of my friend of the Folk Art Lenormand by Rowan Ortins. So that's my little birthday haul. Anyway, I'm curious if you have enjoyed any of those decks yourself. Do you find yourself telling stories when you are looking at the cards, even if it's just you telling the story to yourself as you're doing maybe a daily draw, or maybe if you read for others? I would love to know what you think about that. And it's obviously not an original thought. Lots of people have talked about the stories that the cards tell. And I would say I could pull any 4 decks out of my collection, and they would all have a theme of telling a story. That seemed kind of like the emerging thing for this little haul. It's the stories we tell. And anyway, I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying the decks and the books that you have. I hope that you're safe and well and taking care of yourself and finding joy. And I hope you're finding ways to take care of the earth and others in a mutual aid sense. And I hope to see you in another video soon. Take care, and thanks for your time.